Aloha and welcome to the Kapuna Wiki radio show. This month we are talking with Kapunas who give back. And in studio we have Liane Briggs, who's a director with the Caregiver Foundation. She is on the board with the Kaneohe Community Garden and also participates with the Friendship Force of Honolulu. Kapuna Wiki is Hawaii's senior resource. We talk to the best local professionals in the state regarding topics such as real estate, senior housing, estate planning, finance, and health, so that our Kapuna families can find the best resources in the midst of a life transition. We strive to make sure our seniors are informed and supported every step of the way. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Brandon Lau.
And I'm Andrew Leon,
your host for the Kapuna Wiki radio show.
If you missed any of our shows on air, the Kapuna Wiki radio show is available as a podcast and can be found on both Spotify and Apple for your listening pleasure. The title sponsor for today is Liane Briggs Choice Advisors, providing you with the best real estate information so you can make the most informed decision. As they like to say, real estate is about choice. To contact them, call 753-9033.
And now we have our real estate tip of the week, brought to you by Liane Briggs Choice Advisors.
Have you heard of the Hawaii Homeownership Center? Their mission is to provide education, information, and support to create successful first-time homeowners in Hawaii. By addressing barriers and increasing rates of home ownership, the Homeownership Center aims to build stronger families and communities throughout the state of Hawaii. Their vision is to substantially increase the number of successful homeowners by reaching out to low and moderate income families who never believed they would be homeowners. However, the center serves any family regardless of income.
For more information on the Hawaii Homeownership Center or other ways to participate as a first-time buyer, contact Liane Briggs Choice Advisors at 753-9033. Well, again, today we have the pleasure of speaking with Liane Briggs. She is a director on the Caregiver Foundation. She's also the president of the Kaneohe Community Garden and participates as the vice president with Friendship Force of Honolulu. Welcome, Liane.
Thank you so much, Brandon and Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
I'm just surprised that you can take some time out of your busy schedule to join us. So thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Now, we have the honor of speaking with Kupuna who are still giving back and participating in our community and helping others around them. And we're just so glad that you're so hands-on with all these different organizations. Maybe you can share with us a little bit of how you got involved, maybe beginning with the Caregiver Foundation.
It started out when I was a caregiver, in probably around 2010,
Right.
or maybe even a year or two earlier. And my parents were elderly and needing more care. Also, my husband's family is on the mainland, so he's a long-distance caregiver. So for both sets of parents, we wanted some assistance in how to help them with their living situations, with their health and so forth. And it was different for Paul versus my situation because for my parents were both here, his parents were on the mainland. And so we felt like we needed additional support and information. And so we started attending a caregiver support group at the First Presbyterian Church on the windward side, and that's how we met Gary. Met some really great folks. In fact, some of the caregivers that were first involved with us way back, we see occasionally at Caregiver Foundation events, or I've seen them even in Kaneohe. So there's just a common bond among caregivers, and the needs of the parents or the family member who needs care might differ.
Right.
But I think all caregivers face common emotional experiences, certain common problems like what happens when so-and-so still wants to drive. I mean,
Right.
That's common for all caregivers. So,
Everyone can relate.
Yeah.
So you're a board member now,
Mhm.
and what in particular do you participate with as far as your responsibilities?
Oh, let's see. With special events,
Uh-huh.
we had an online auction this year
Right.
because of COVID. Let's see, I've assisted with bylaws and governance questions. So typical of any board member, I think, or other organizations.
Well, definitely utilizing your experience, right, and your background.
Mhm.
Did you always start out in community work, or where did you begin?
Well, as a career,
Yeah.
I was a high school history teacher
Okay.
first at Marino High School. That was my undergrad was in history and secondary ed, so that was
Okay.
my first career. And then my second career, I was a paralegal at Fonseca and Chang in its various iterations
Okay.
for close to 30 years. And then just in 2015, I went back to school at University of Hawaii at Manoa and got a master's in public administration with a certificate in nonprofit management. So I think with my volunteer work, maybe within the second half or so of my legal career, I had an idea that I wanted to work more with nonprofits and found the master's program. It really fit my needs. And so I went back to school and made a career change. So that was 2015. I was going to school.
2015.
Yeah.
Okay.
And left the law firm. And then since 2015, it's been a number of either volunteer or paid type positions with nonprofits.
So how long were you working prior to getting your master's? How many years were you in the workforce?
Oh, that would have been 38 years.
38 years, wow.
Yeah.
So you're never too late to go back to school and get your master's, in other words.
Not at all. So that means 38 years between the bachelor's and the master's, and there was a part of me that had always wished I had done it earlier, but time was passing. I couldn't go back then, and it just so happened that my interest in nonprofit work and my finding the master's just synced, and so then I did take the plunge.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you initially thought about going back to school to get your master's, what were some of the concerns you had at that time?
Well, actually going to campus and could I do the work? Plus, I was working.
Oh, you're still working?
Yeah,
okay.
when I first started it. So I was working full time, going to school at night. I think the main concern was how was I going to fit everything in with homework and regular work, and then I was still doing other volunteer positions, and you know how they say that if you want something to get done, give it to a busy person, and so somehow the time management, because you're busy, you're just forced to manage time better. So, I look back at those days kind of fondly and think, how did I ever do it?
You're probably proud of yourself for being able to put it all together.
Yeah, I am, but now a few years later...
And you have a very understanding husband.
Yes, very supportive. I kind of look back and say, wow, how did I do it?
Right.
But you just do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it takes a lot of determination, I think, to do that, and discipline, And again, it shows you don't have to just go and get educated when you're younger, but life is it's a learning experience. It's a lifelong process.
Yes.
Being educated.
Yes, and the theme of your show is active kupuna, and I think that's the perspective that we bring through our years of living, that there are so many different avenues for learning and staying active and being involved with the community.
That's wonderful. Well, Liane, when we come back, I wanted to touch a little bit more about the Caregiver Foundation, also your involvement with the Kaneohe Community Garden, and Friendship Forest of Honolulu, which sounds really interesting. Okay. So we'll talk more about that right after this commercial break.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, we have Liane Briggs. She's a board member with the Caregiver Foundation, the president of the Kaneohe Community Garden, and the incoming vice president of the Friendship Forest of Honolulu. And right before the break, we got to know Liane's background. She had a pretty long career. You started in education, then you went to legal, right?
Yes.
And then now you're offering your time to help these other organizations. Now, we'll touch upon each organization, but let's start with the Caregiver Foundation. For the listeners out there who don't know the Caregiver Foundation, who are you guys and what do you guys do?
Okay. The mission of the Caregiver Foundation is to provide emotional and practical support to kupuna, adults with disabilities, and caregivers. And so services range from assistance to first-time caregivers or beginner caregivers, and that could be in the form of referrals, support groups, placement services, and then as the care recipient needs greater care, so do the services of the Caregiver Foundation evolve. So it could mean assisting families with a move out, cleaning up the house, liaising with attorneys, accountants, other professionals, extending all the way through hospice and end-of-life services.
And you touched upon, I think, one of the key ones, the support groups, caregiver support groups.
Yes.
Now, we know that Hawaii is, it's a growing population, and also people are staying home and having to care for, whether it's their parents or just other family members. Obviously, that's a big task. In addition to their full-time job, right?
Yes.
How are your support groups being organized, and when do they happen? If you can share some information about that.
Yes. So, like any organization, pre-COVID, we were having physical face-to-face meetings once a month in different areas of the island. So there were several groups running simultaneously. When COVID hit, then of course all of that came to an end, and it just so happens that we're going to be starting online Zoom type caregiver support groups, and our first one the groups are on the third Tuesday of the month at 4 p.m. Honolulu time, so that caregivers on the mainland, if they're doing long distance caregiving for folks back home here in Hawaii, they could even join in. So third Tuesday of the month at 4 p.m. The first one is on January 19th, and the topic is communicating care in the age of COVID-19. The second one will be particularly interesting. It's scheduled on February 16th, and the topic is COVID-19, what we know now that we didn't know a year ago, because we're coming up to the 1-year anniversary when everything started happening, and yes, a lot has happened, but so has our knowledge base. And I think it's helpful to kind of think about the last year, really how far we've come in our understanding of the virus, and also what precautions we still need to take as we head into 2021.
Yeah, and with somebody as busy as you, and given the pandemic, how has that affected your, if I could say, your willingness to stay involved, or just to hold back and stay safe?
Yes, well, of course, it's a matter of being physically safe.
Right.
So it's always gauging whatever physical situation arises and the number of people that are going to be there and how close they're going to be. If people are wearing masks, those kinds of visual cues, before I enter a situation. Socially, the best part, if I can say that there's a good part of this past year, has been just the explosion of online learning opportunities, cultural opportunities. It's just been phenomenal. And of course, we have all had to learn Zoom or different online platforms. It's been kind of rocky at times, and I have to admit I was a little bit resistant at first. But when you see the wealth of learning opportunities that are on the computer, and you just have to do it because there's just so much content that's available online, streaming right into your own home.
You know, one character quality that we've noticed from a very active kupuna is that there's always a sense of optimism and continued sense of wonder and curiosity. That the best days are yet to come. They've cherished the memories that they have, but they they want to get out there and do more.
Yeah.
And I just see that as a common theme where people are still so active.
Yes. And for myself, yes, we've had a lot of losses, this year, not only members of our community, and illnesses of all types and our loss of freedom, but I'm kind of wondering now what's going to be life after we get through this toughest period. And it's pretty exciting to think about the continuum of time.
Right.
And, how will life evolve? How will we evolve from this experience?
And tell us, we know that you're involved with the Kaneohe Community Garden and Friendship Force of Honolulu. Maybe you can share a little bit about those two organizations.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to. I've always done home gardening, with my dad since small kid time. And so I've always been interested in gardening. And when we lived in town, I gardened at the Makiki Community Garden.
Right.
And then when we moved to Kaneohe, I found, there's a community garden out there. So I did take leadership positions within the garden. It is a part of the City and County of Honolulu Community Garden Program. And so it's been pretty interesting working with city leaders and also with the gardeners. It is a recreational gardening program. And in Kaneohe, we have plots that are 7 by 14 feet, which seems kind of small, but you can grow quite a bit.
Right.
Even in a plot that
Where is this located?
It is on Kea'ahala Road.
Okay.
There's a neighborhood park. It's a ballpark, and it's up on the hill of the park.
So how many plots are there, roughly?
There are about 60 plots.
Wow, that's a lot of participation.
Yeah, yeah, it's good fun, and getting back to the theme of staying active.
Right.
It's not only growing your own food, but it's great. Gardening is great exercise. There's a lot of bending and walking and using tools and fresh air, sunshine. It's just the best.
Yeah. And I'm curious, Friendship Force of Honolulu, it sounds fun.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's been a recent involvement of mine. Through friends who are very actively involved, and it's an international organization with clubs organized all over the world, and its purpose is to increase understanding through travel. And so the Honolulu Club will go and visit a club in another part of the country or the world, and vice versa. I haven't gone on any Friendship Force Honolulu journeys outbound to other destinations, but I have participated on the inbound journeys where we host a club that comes to Honolulu.
Right. So what is your next potential outbound venture?
Oh.
Well, once everything gets settled with COVID.
Yes. Well, Sweden is
nice.
one of the destinations, and the Pacific Northwest is outbound. And then inbound is a club from Montreal, Canada.
Okay. Wow.
And so, if I could give a pitch.
Please, by all means.
That we're looking for new members to host incoming travelers. It's a great way to meet people from all over the world. And of course, if you would like to travel once COVID settles down, then there are those opportunities as well.
I'm curious, if somebody was interested in that particular opportunity, how do they make contact?
Let's see. I will have to get that information for you.
Okay. Well, they can also go to kapunawiki.com.
Yes.
I'm sure we'll have it posted.
Oh, great.
So, Liane, what next for you? Obviously, we know that you're a key member on the board at the Caregiver Foundation, and it seems like you're key in leadership with the other two organizations as well.
Yes.
Where do you see yourself going from here? and what do you want to be involved with?
I think I'll always be involved with these organizations because they really hit my interest points, about human services, gardening, and travel.
Right.
Those are my personal interests. So, for example, with the community garden, I'll be stepping down as president at the end of December, but I already have my volunteer capacities lined up after I retire from that position. So I think I'll always be involved with those groups.
Right.
One very recent activity of mine is ukulele playing.
Oh, okay.
And so
I didn't see your ukulele when you stepped in the studio.
yeah, forgot.
Okay.
Left it in the car.
All right.
And again, going back to Zoom, there are so many opportunities, for classes and jams, and in fact, I'm playing open mic.
No kidding.
With a group on the Isle of Wight in the
Wow.
UK. So it's been tremendous fun. And also, by having these appointments to play,
Right.
that gets me to practice.
Right.
Which
You-
is
you
the
want
whole
to prepare.
goal. Yeah.
So that you can play well.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the whole goal, so that I do this on a regular basis.
How does one go about lining up gigs online? I'm curious
Well,
because now you're incorporating not just local audiences, right? I mean, from everywhere in the world. And it doesn't have to be a huge audience. It's just people who are willing to listen.
yeah, I think the first is to get over shyness and
Oh, the what?
get over being shy.
Oh, sure.
Like, I'm not that good.
Right.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't want to do it. But once you get over that, and I think seeing other regular people, performing and having a good time, I think
Right.
that's very infectious.
Right.
And so it starts little by little. I think my first song was "Take Me Out to the Ball Game."
Okay.
Something simple. But over these weeks and months, I've expanded my repertoire and looking for new songs, and it's very infectious in a good way.
Right. So you get out there. You're actually hooked up with the monitor in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
your computer mic,
Yes.
right? And you have your ukulele.
Yes.
And I guess somebody hosting the event
Yes.
will say, and here is
Yep.
Liane Briggs
Mhm.
from Kaneohe, Hawaii,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
she's going to play for us this song, and you go for it.
Yeah. Well, actually, I say a few words about the song myself and the title, the artist I play, and everybody's just very well receiving.
Right.
Even if I make mistakes.
Right.
Yeah, it's fun to see everybody's smiling faces on the screen.
On the screen, right?
Yeah, that is a very different experience from being in a meeting or in a webinar. But to have music and everybody's having a good time and smiling,
Does
that's
your
fun.
husband ever join you?
No.
No. Maybe in the audience.
Mm. He is active in a different way.
Okay.
He bicycles and hikes and plays tennis. So
He's physically out there all the
Yes, yes, that's his thing. For me, it's gardening,
Right.
playing ukulele.
Cultural activities.
Yeah.
So, Liane, what's one
Mm.
final piece of advice you share with our listeners about staying active, about being engaged, and giving back to the community?
Yeah. I think to be looking at your physical activity, but also social and intellectual activity is important also, so that we're all learning in whatever way we can, and that we're social in whatever way we can, whether that's calling somebody up on the phone or sending an email and making an appointment to then do a phone call, or getting onto
Just
Zoom.
continually reach out.
Yes. So don't neglect the social and intellectual, even while we try to stay physically active
And safe.
and safe. Correct.
Well, thank you so much, Liane, for sharing with us. We've been talking with Liane Briggs. She is a director with with the Caregiver Foundation, also involved with the Kaneohe Community Garden, and incoming Vice President of the Friendship Force of Honolulu. So Liane, thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you so much, Brandon and Andrew. It's been a pleasure.
Coming up next, we have our Kapuna Wiki Classic Trivia.